Hi everyone, welcome tonight to our ThermOWeb Craft Room Facebook Live. I am in the Halloween mood, and so we're going to be doing a Halloween project tonight. I just need to adjust there we go, a little bit. So I'm going to wait just a minute or two to get started to give more people a chance to join in so they can see the entire project. But we are going to be making these cute little stuffies tonight. A little candy corn, a ghost, and a little jack-o'-lantern. And when I had this idea, I made a prototype and I made this candy corn. And you'd see he's a little bit bigger than my tiny one. And I thought it was cute, but I thought, you know what, if we go mini, these will be even cuter. So I shrunk it down to the mini size, which actually, as I'm looking at the picture of myself, is just slightly larger than the ones on my shirt tonight. And this was another ThermOWeb project that I did that you can find over on the blog. And I'm just going to join this Facebook Live on my phone as well, because for some reason that's the only way that I can see the comments is if I join with my phone. They don't show up on my computer, and I don't know why. I might be having trouble with that tonight too. Shoot. Well, I am grateful as always to Dawn, who keeps an eye. Oh, there we go. Found them. Found the comments. Okay. There we go. Oh, fantastic. We've got, I see Dawn and Jan and Mimi, Swathi. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Oh, yes, I was going to talk. Swathi said she loves the wall hangings behind me. I was going to talk a little bit about those before I get started. These are my Strippy Improv Halloween projects. They're from my Strippy Improv pattern. It has 9 different Halloween blocks that you can make, and it uses reverse applique with some piecing underneath it. And I do that with the ThermOWeb HeatnBond Light Sewable Fusible Adhesive as well. So this was the version that I made for this year's sew-along, which just ended a week ago. This is using the Spellbound fabrics from Benartex. They're by Marin Sutton. And then here are a couple versions I've done in other years as well. So super fun to have a lot of different Halloween decor. And then, oh, we've got Carolyn coming for the first time. Nice to have you here. I mentioned my shirt. This was a project that I did that's on the ThermOWeb blog from 2 years ago, and knowing Dawn, I bet she'll put the link for it in the comments. And it is, so the candy corns are actually made out of t-shirt material too, and then they have their raw edge applique as well, and I just stitched around the edge. And so that was a fun project. There's also templates for Spooky Eyes, which is the shirt that my son Jojo had made. And then 2 more Halloween projects to show you. This is one of my favorite ones that I've done for ThermOWeb, and these are reversible placemats. And because Halloween goes so quickly, and it's fun to have Halloween decorations, but you know they're out for a couple weeks and they're gone. So I made reversible placemats, and this is the Halloween side, and then this is the fall side. So they're all done with raw edge fusible applique. You can see I've got 2 of them. So you can use them for Halloween and use them for fall. So that is another project that I've done on the ThermOWeb blog, and that one works for both Halloween and for fall. Oh, we've got some more people joining. Awesome. Alma and Mar and Vicky and Karen. Great. Thanks to all of you for coming tonight. And then one last project I'm going to show. This is a pillow made using my strippy improv technique, like the wall hangings behind me. And it's got the little jack-o'-lantern face on it, which is also fusible applique. And I created this pillow because there have been several years where I've been very gung-ho about making strippy improv blocks, and then it got to be right about this time, and I realized that I was not going to get my project finished before Halloween. So what I did is I turned one block into a throw pillow, because that's much quicker to finish than either a wall hanging or a table runner. And so the directions for turning a block into a throw pillow are on my blog, on my website, which is called Quilty Zest, Quilty Z-E-S-T. And then it's in the week 4 quilt along blog post are the instructions for the pillow. There's also instructions for turning a block into a little trick-or-treat bag. So 2 fun ideas to do with you know, an orphan Halloween block that you're running out of time to make into something. All right, let's get back to tonight's project. These cute little mini stuffies. I want to make a bunch of these and just put them in a little bowl on our coffee table for the Halloween season. And I've got 3 here, and after tonight I'll have 3 more, so I can make those. And okay, and like I said, for the people around at the beginning, I started out with a larger version and then decided the minis were cuter, so I went to the minis instead. And one other thing I love about these projects is that they are using my Find Your Way fabrics from Benertex. That's my first fabric collection. And I don't know where my little pile of fabric went, but I have, there's turquoises, oranges, golds in it, and I pulled out the oranges, the yellows, and the whites for this project. So, oh, Vicky's got a pumpkin block to make into a pillow. Yep, that is so nice because it is a super fast project. So anyway, I pulled out my oranges, yellows, and whites to put these projects together. So I'm going to switch to my other view. You can see my cutting table now. I'm going to move these guys out of, we'll put them up there, and you can see them in the corner. There we go. And so I did a little pre-sewing so that we could get to the fun stuff during the demo. And so to make the candy corn stuffy, these are each 1 3/4 inch wide strips of fabric by about 8 inches long. And so I've sewed the white, the orange, and the yellow together. And every year when I do something candy corn, I have to either search up candy corn or check out the bag I bought from the store because I can never remember the order. I know white is on an end, but I can never remember where the orange and the yellow are. And I have to say, I've already bought 2 bags of candy corns, and my 16-year-old is doing his best to finish them up. And so I have sewn those 3 strips together, and then I've got a piece of the HeatnBond Fusible Fleece, which reminds me, in all of the show and tell I was doing, here are the 3 ThermOWeb products I'm using tonight. The HeatnBond Light Sewable Iron-On Adhesive is for the raw edge applique, the ghost eyes, and the pumpkin face. And then the Fusible Fleece is to give dimension to our shapes. And then the pressing paper, you'll see why we need this to protect our iron in general, but in particular tonight because of the shape of our pumpkin piecing. Okay, so I've got a piece of Fusible Fleece cut that is just about the same size as my 3 strips stitched together. And then I put the pressing paper over it because in case that fleece is just a little bit larger than my piecing, I don't have to worry about wrecking my iron. So I'm going to fuse that in place, And it's real easy to know which side of the fusible fleece to adhere to because it's got a nice rough surface. Okay, so there we go. So that is together. And I'm going to actually do the fusing for all three of these right away. So for the pumpkin, you'll see my pumpkin is striped, but the stripes run on a diagonal. Now, it's definitely easier to do stripes that go straight in one direction, either up and down or sideways, but I wanted the diagonal look. So what I ended up doing was sewing together strips that are 1.5 inches wide and about 7 inches long. But you can see I have them offset. So when I sew one to the other, I got some overlap at the top and bottom. Roughly about 1/2 inch not overlap, offset. They're offset roughly about 1/2 inch. So for each of them, I'm going to position the top piece about 1/2 inch up. And so then when I press it open, I've got this great diagonal shape. And so this I'm going to fuse down. And here's what I was talking about with having the pressing paper, because you can see I've got some of the fusible fleece that is exposed because I've got such a weird shape that I'm pressing. And so by having the pressing paper over it, I know that my iron is protected. The other option is to trim it down before you press it on, but I like doing it this way because it gives me the maximum amount of fabric to use from what I've pieced. Because I did factor in some overage, but it's just nice to have the option of all of it. And you'll see, because I used my Find Your Way fabric, I'm working with 2 oranges specifically. If you're working from your scraps, play around with a bunch of different oranges and make it scrappy as well. I also thought about doing little patchwork to have them be little squares, but you see a lot of pumpkin blocks that are that way, so I decided to try the diagonal instead. And I can see we've got some fans of the diagonals. Fantastic. Okay, and then for the ghost, my fabric line just has one white fabric, and so my ghost is, these are a little bit big, my ghost is not pieced like the other two, it's just a white ghost. But if you are using scraps and you want to piece some white scraps together either on the diagonal or in some other shape, feel free to do that. I just wanted all of my stuff to be using my Find Your Way fabrics because that's really fun for me. Okay, and so you'll notice for the ghost I have 2 separate pieces instead of one long joined piece like I have for the other 2. And that honestly is just because I had 2 scraps that were the right size. You could have it be all one piece as well. And so we're going to start with the ghost. So what you want to do is put these 2 pieces with the fusible fleece on the back, wrong sides together. So the right sides are out. And then you find my template. The ghost flew away. Okay. And then, so on the ThermOWeb's blog, with my blog post about today's project, there is a PDF to download that has the template shapes for the pumpkin, the ghost, and the candy corn. So I've printed those out and cut them out, and I'm going to trace them onto my little quilt sandwich here. And you'll notice that on the finished project, I did little pinking shears around the edge. And so I want to make sure when I position the ghost that I have it positioned enough far away from the edges that I've got room for the pinking shears, because the drawn line is where we're going to stitch. And I am just going very lightly with a pencil because my marking pens that I have at the moment, one is very, very vibrantly pink, and then the other is white, which really does not work on white. So I'm going to go very lightly with my pencil and then stitch on that line, and then I can erase if I need to. Yes, the pressing sheets are great because you can use them until like you've used the heck out of it and then just throw it out. And they come in a pack of 5, and they're nice and big. You can see, kind of like 2, let's see, does it have a size on? Yeah, 11 by 17. So they're nice and large as well. So I've got my ghosts traced here. See if I put it up, and you can see my very light tracing line. And again, I've got both layers together. Now, before I stitch that, what I'm going to do is add my my eyes to it. And so if you see on my templates, I've got the faces right on the templates. So I trace those onto the HeatnBond light as well. And then I've got a scrap of black solid, and I'm just going to, oops, it's a little bigger. Thought I was being all fancy having the HeatnBond light the name on the piece that I used, but it was bigger than my fabric. So I'm going to press that onto the black fabric and then cut all of those out. Now I actually have another set cut out, so you all don't have to sit here and watch me cut. But I do want to give you one tip for when you are cutting smaller pieces like these, and that's after I've fused but before I cut. What I will typically do is just gently pull the paper back just to the corner of the shape. And that way, because these shapes are so tiny, so trying to hold them and also peel off the paper can be hard. So if you loosen it up a little bit after you cut, actually this one just fell off all on its own. So that's my little tip for tiny applique pieces. And then I'm going to take my 2 ghost eyeballs, and I had the hardest time cutting these ovals nice and prettily curved. So hopefully you have a little more luck with the scissors than I do, but they look nice and spooky no matter what. Oops, shoot, I'm sorry. I thought I got the link up. I wonder if I just didn't hit the update button. I will get it up right after the live. So I'm going to put my eyeballs right there and then put my pressing paper down. When you're putting it on tiny things, put it down very gently so it doesn't move them. And then press those eyes in place. So we don't press the eyes in place until we've got the shape outlined, because then you know exactly where to put the eyes so they are centered on the head. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with the pumpkin. And you can see I did this all as one long piece because it made it easier for me to piece. But now I'm going to cut it into 2 pieces and then put those back to back. And I've got my pumpkin shape here. And same thing, I'm just going to take the pencil line around the outside. I probably could have pulled out my white pencil for this, but the pencil itself works just fine. It's a very faint line, so you just need to be able to see it enough to follow it. And then same thing where I'm going to position my jack-o'-lantern, and I made, a mouth and eyeballs the way that I wanted them. You certainly can, adjust them as you would like to make your eyes. I know some people really like round eyes, and some like triangles, and some like square noses. So you can adapt it to whatever shape you would like for your jack-o'-lantern face. Okay, there, I've got that. What is the print on the ghost fabric? So it is, well, I put this up here. I'll lift it up. So this is from my Find Your Way collection, and it's called Waypoints, and it's 3 little square dots, I guess, in 3 different gray colors, for lack of a better word. And so it adds a little interest to it instead of just having a plain white ghost. There's a lot of really fun low volume white prints out there to choose from. And there is my pumpkin face. And then now that I'm done with that, what I'm going to do is put a couple pins in just to make sure, because I have the 2 layers. And I want to make sure those 2 layers are held together as I stitch. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the candy corn. And so I'm going to trace, let's get these pieces out of the way. I'm going to trace the candy corn, and the candy corn template has the lines on it for the 3 different colors. That's not necessarily something you have to follow exactly, but it just gives you an idea, to make sure that you've got your 3 colors kind of evenly spaced out. So I'm going to trace my candy corn shape onto one of these. And then, so for this one, I want ideally the seams for the orange and the white and the yellow and the orange to line up. So when I go to put them together, I'm going to turn it sideways, and I can see where those seams are and make sure that they line up pretty well. And then same thing, put a pin or 2, and you can either put the pins in the middle, you can even put them outside on the edges, because as long as they're not near the lines where you're going to be stitching, it'll hold it together. So, and the reason we do the applique first is, it could be last, but the reason I did it first is if you like, you can stitch these appliques down with some black thread, either with a zigzag or with a straight stitch to help hold them in place. And so I have it set up for us to do the applique first, because if you do that, you want to just do it through one layer and not through both. Otherwise, you'll have that black stitching on the other side. So I'm not going to do that with this one because it holds just fine on its own, and that takes too long to show for a demo. So I'm just going to stitch. Now the one thing I want to talk about too is thread color. So for the ghost, it's easy, right? Because the ghost is white. So I have a very light gray thread in my machine, which blends in nicely with this white print. And for the candy corn, I ended up using the gray thread as well, the light gray, because it worked with the white, and it just sort of, you barely see it in this project, in the candy corn. But for the pumpkin, I switched over to a dark orange thread because the light gray was going to show up just way too much on the orange pumpkin. And so I did switch for that. So just keep your thread colors in mind as you're stitching. So I'm going to start out with the pumpkin, and I'm going to move my machine over, or my computer over slightly to get to my sewing machine. And what we're going to do is leave an opening for turning. And I am stitching directly on that line that I drew. But what I'm going to do, is leave the bottom open. Okay, let me switch back. Okay, well, this is great. You can see it really well. So I left the bottom open between my thumbs right here. And that's because that's where I'm going to add in a little fiber fill to give it more dimension. So I'm going to take out the pins, and the next thing I'm going to do is take my pinking shears, and I'm going to just cut, I mean, I'm eyeballing it, but roughly like a 1/4 inch past my stitching line. And the reason I like to do stuffed things this way is because I admit I am a pretty terrible hand sewer. So anytime I make something stuffed, and if you make it the more typical way where you put it right sides together, then turn it and sew around the edge and then turn it right side out, I don't like how my hand stitching looks when I go to close up that edge. And so by doing it this way, I have the pinked edge so it doesn't fray. It gives it a little bit of cute character, and I don't have to do my terrible hand stitching. So then the last thing that we need is a little bit of polyfill. And it's a very little bit because these are not big, and they already have that nice padding in them from the 2 layers of the Fusible fleece. Got a little thread to cut off. So I start out, and you can see I just have a little hole in there to put some through. Okay. Yeah, these, I see some of you are planning to make these tomorrow, which is fantastic, and it's great. You can see they go together super quickly, and they are just a great way to use up your scraps. So you can see if I turn it this way, you can kind of see it's got a little bit of a poof to them now. Just enough to give it a little character. And if you don't stuff it too much like this also, it's pretty easy to stitch the open edge. So what I've done is I've kind of pushed the fiber fill up further than I want it to be so that I can get this edge nice and flat. And I'm going to put 2 pins in. And so now where I'm sewing, you can see if I do it this way, it is super flat. So where I'm sewing, it's nice and flat, and I'm just going to start, I'm going to put this up a little bit, I'm going to start where I had been stitching before and overlap there and do a little back stitch, and then stitch along the edge, roughly a 1/4 inch in from where I had the pinking cut, and then stitch to where I had the stitches before as well. I'm just going to do that, then I'll come back over. Okay. And then trim off the extra thread. And if I wasn't doing this, under the pressure of doing it for a video, I would take a little more time to make sure I've got my stitches lined up really nicely. But even without taking a lot of time to make sure they were very nice, they're lined up pretty well. A little thread to cut off. So there is my little candy corn. And then I will do the same thing with the ghost. So I find it easiest to do the opening on as straight of an edge as I can find. The ghost does not have a lot of straight edges. Where I did it before was on this side of the body. Either side would work, but that was a fairly straight area, so that's where I would leave the opening on the ghost. And then for the pumpkin, which like I said, I'm going to switch to a dark orange thread for that. But for the pumpkin, I also did it on a side, because if you look at the bottom of the pumpkin template, it has a couple humps, I guess, for lack of a better word, curves. And it's much easier to do this on a straight edge. And that is what the little pumpkin looks like. So that is how these projects go together. And I wanted to go back to something I saw in the comments. Oh yes, with the fruit coasters, I did the I also avoided the hand stitching by appliquing over where the cut is. Oh yeah, Dawn said it would be cute on a sweatshirt, or kind of like my shirt. as well. And then someone said something about, I thought I saw something about garland. Oh, yes, there. Okay. Yes, unstuffed as a garland. So I actually have, they're not on the garland right now, but I did a no-sew project last year with a pumpkin, a candy corn, a ghost, and a bat. And this was a ThermOWeb live video last year. So there is a blog post and then there's the replay of it on YouTube. But this was a no-sew project using the Fusible hem tape, and then I put a layer of the liquid vinyl over it, which not only made it shiny but helped those different strips all sort of stick together. And I just fused different strips of fabric onto a muslin backing, and then I put these on little clothespins and put them on a string. So, but you're right, these cute little stuffy ones would be really fun on a garland as well. But that was another ThermOWeb project that I'm guessing, you know, Dawn can probably dig up the link for that one as well. So yeah, garland is always super cute, and I actually need to take these guys upstairs, up to the first floor of my house and set them up for this Halloween season. So that would be a great way to help decorate. So, because you can see I've got all of these down here, so none of them are on my front door. So maybe after tonight I'll take one of them upstairs and put it on my front door. So, all right, well, that is how you make these little stuffies. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, feel free to pop them in the chat and I can answer them before we wrap up for tonight. Oh, we're talking about, storms and the feed freezing up. Yeah, we have had rain here pretty much since Saturday. And tonight it's pretty chilly as well. So hopefully it unfroze. I missed that it was freezing. So hopefully you all were able to hear and understand all of it. And the technology gremlins were not messing with us tonight. Oh, yeah, I knew Dawn would come up with the link. Thanks so much, Dawn. So appreciate that. And so if you all do go either tonight or tomorrow or this week and make some of these little stuffies, please come back to the ThermOWeb craft room and post pictures of your finished projects there, because it's always so fun. I know for me specifically to see when someone made a project that I shared. Someone last month shared the Happy Fall project right after I had done it, and that was really neat. And it's also great inspiration for everyone else who's a part of the ThermOWeb craft room. And I will, as soon as I am done with the live, I'll go back and make sure, get the link for the PDF for the templates up onto the blog post, because I tried to do that right before this started and I did not do it successfully. So you can, if you go to the blog post on the ThermOWeb blog about tonight's Facebook Live, you'll find the link for the templates as well. So, all right, looks like Dawn is getting ready to draw the winners for our giveaways tonight. Fantastic. So always fun to get some extra treats in addition to a little sewing inspiration. There's one winner. Congratulations, Judy. And I will say another great place to find shapes. I mean, obviously you can draw them yourself, but kids' coloring books are a great way to find applique shapes because they're generally real simple drawings. And so, but you know, a cat, a black cat, or a witch's hat, like you see behind me, or a bat, are also things you can draw yourself or find on the internet as well. Ooh, and a gift card for Alma. Congratulations. And a new products bundle for Karen. Well, congratulations to all three of you, and thank you to ThermOWeb for those great prizes. And I will be back here in November doing a holiday themed project. I don't know the date off the top of my head, but we'll make an event for it on the Facebook page leading up to it, and Dawn will send out an email about it. And you can also, if you don't already, head over to my website, QuiltyZest, zest.com, and sign up for my newsletter, because I always put out a newsletter about Facebook Lives that I do, tutorials that I do, projects that I'm working on. I have a brand new fabric line hitting shops right now called Nature Unfiltered, and I'll be talking about that in my newsletter as well. So head over there, or I also have a Facebook page for Quilty Zest and Instagram as well, if you use either of those social media platforms. But thank you very much to all of you for joining us tonight, and happy sewing of little mini stuffies, and hope you enjoy your Halloween.
98% of people who want to go live should be using that. It would just make